In this video, we will have a quick look at the activity lifecycle. So we talked a bit about the activity in the previous video, and the activity is basically a screen that the user sees in front of him. So for example, if you launch your application for the very first time, your very first launcher screen will appear, and that we also call an activity. So what happens with an app that's may possibly just have only one screen, for example, one activity, or any other activity that it goes to? What happens to that activity? What is the life cycle of that specific activity? So this picture that I got from the Android developers website is basically a nice indication of what happens when your application runs and when an activity gets launched and you move away from that activity. What happens to that specific activity and which methods will be run? So when your activity first gets launched, it goes to the onCreate method, it goes to onStart, it goes to onResume, and then you see your activity running. So the green block here is your activity is actually running and the user is looking at the screen. So then something else could happen. It could be that another activity comes into the foreground, then it goes into onPause. If the user returns to the activity, it calls onResume and the user sees it again. But if the user does not go back to it and the activity is no longer visible, it calls onStop. If it's in onStop and the user navigates to the activity, it goes to onRestart, onStart, onResume, and the user can see it again. But if it's on stop and the activity is finishing or being destroyed by the system, it goes to onDestroy before the activity is shut down. Also in onStop, if there's apps with a high priority that needs memory, it will also kill the process. And then if the user navigates back to the activity, it calls onCreate again, onStart, onResume, and then the activity will be running again. So we'll quickly try and demonstrate this in an application. So you're going to create a new application, and we'll just call this one Lifecycle Events. And then let's keep the domains and so forth the same. We can just say next there. We will keep Android 4.4. We will keep the empty activity. We can leave it as main activity and activity main. That's fine. So let's just create a new application, wait for it to finish, and then we'll come back to the video. Right, so when your application is done running, we're going to get into the main activity. So normally it opens up the two, but if it's not opened, you can go into Java, into your project folder first, or your first Java folder there, and get to the main activity to open it up. And you can also go into Resources, Layout, Activity Main XML to open it up. But for now, we're not going to use the activity main XML, so I'm just going to close that one. We're just going to work with the Java file. So you'll see the very first method that we have here is in fact the onCreate method. So what I want to do here is to use a class called log, and that's from android.util, and you can just click on it. And you can see by clicking on it, it automatically adds the import statement for you at the top. So I'm going to say log.d, and you can see this log.d gives us in the log cat at the bottom, gives us a log as soon as the application comes into the onCreate method. And you can see it gives, we need to give it a tag and a message. So I'm going to start with a tag for all of them the same that will say, let's just say life cycle event. And then we'll have the message as, in this case, in onCreate. Right, so log.d will basically log it inside of the logcat. We'll look at that now with the tag lifecycle event and then the message in onCreate. Now, this is sometimes you can use the log for error correction and to see where you are at a specific time in your application when it's running. So in this case, we want to see the methods that is actually run if we run this activity and we move away from this activity. Now, if we quickly have a look at that picture again, you'll see that the onCreate is the first method that runs. Then there's onStart and onResume. So let's see if we can get those two methods quickly. So in order to get these other methods, we're just going to right click and say generate, and we're going to say override methods. And you can see there's onStart, onStop. So the methods that we want now will be first the onStart, then onResume. So let's go to the onStart method. You can just double click it, and you can see there's the onStart method. So I'm going to copy this log so that we can use this log again, paste it there, and instead of saying in onCreate, I'm going to say in onStart. Now let's go to the next method. So the next method, there's the onResume method. So let's do the same thing. We're going to right click, say generate, override the method, and we're going to search for onResume. So the onResume method, there it is. Paste that log again, and we're going to say there inside of the onResume method. Then go down a bit. Let's see for the next method. After onResume, we also got onPause and onStop. So we're going to right click again, search for the onPause, double click, and then let's paste it again. And in this case also we're in the onPause method. Now the next method again will be after onPause, we've got onStop. So let's try and get that method quickly. Right click, generate, override. There's the onStop method. And let's paste it again. And just to say we're here in the onStop method. Let's check again. There's also an onDestroy and an onRestart. So let's search for onDestroy. There's the onDestroy method. Also just paste that log again. I just removed something there, so I'm just going to go back. The call to super must be there, and that should be onDestroy. And then the last method will be the onRestart method. Let's just check if we can get that onRestart method, generate, override methods, onRestart, and there we go. And then we can paste that one also and say this one should be onRestart. So we've got the onCreate method, the onStart, onResume, onPause, onStop, onDestroy, and onRestart methods. It's basically all of the lifecycle event methods of an activity. So what we're going to do now is to run this application, and you can choose any one of your devices that you've actually set up. So I'm just going to take any one of those and start running it. As soon as this device is up and running and our application is running, we'll see how these methods actually gets logged, because we are calling this log.d inside of the logcat at the bottom. So you can open up the logcat at the bottom and you'll see that it's busy loading the emulator still. So as soon as the device is online, we will start seeing something happening in the logcat at the bottom. Right, so my application is busy running right now. And if I go just a bit up there inside of the logcat, you can see this is the bottom of it. If I go a bit up, you can see that there's my first lifecycle event. The activity went into the onCreate method, then into onStart, and then into onResume as soon as it started running. So if you look at the picture quickly, you can see in this picture that when we first launch the activity, it goes to onCreate, onStart, and onResume. And that's exactly what happened here. So let's go back to that virtual device quickly. If I click on the back button, let's see what happens. So if I click on the back button, you can see there's the next lifecycle event. It went into onPause. So when we clicked on the back button, it went into onPause, then into onStop, and then into onDestroy. And now the activity is basically shut down. Okay, so now if we relaunch this activity by just going to the lifecycle event, clicking on it, you can see from the onDestroy it went into onCreate again. So it's basically launching the application again. OnCreate, then onStart, then onResume again. Okay, so that's the life cycle if we click on the back button. If I click on the home button, now you see in the home button, it goes from the onResume to where the user is seeing it to onPause and then onStop. So it went to the onStop and now it's waiting either to be destroyed totally or for the user to navigate back to the activity. So now if we navigate back to the activity by clicking there, clicking on lifecycle events, you can see that from onStop, it goes to onRestart and then again to onStart. So it's onStop, onRestart, and then onStart again. So these are the life cycle events that we're talking about when we're talking about an activity, and you can use these methods in order to do some very important stuff depending on on what your application will be doing. For example, if we're playing music in the background and the activity gets destroyed, in the onDestroy method will then be a nice place to go and actually release all the memory so that we don't have that memory still running on the phone. So in the onDestroy, we can normally get rid of every piece of memory that we're still using somewhere else. You can also do that in onStop and maybe reinitialize stuff in onResume again, or do something in onPause. So it's up to you in your applications where you want to include some of these methods. Please remember that these methods will run no matter if you are actually including them in your application or not. They will run. If you're not including them in the application, it will just basically run super.onStart and super.onResume and destroy and so forth. So if you want to add coding to it, then you can override these methods. So just a note, you do not need to have these methods in your activities for it to actually work, but it's good methods to implement if you want to get rid of some memory used or reinitialize stuff. So please look at this activity again, run a few examples of it on the phone, do a few things with it, click on the back buttons and so forth to see which methods will actually run when you do certain actions on the phone.